Oh my, oh my, oh my. This was a show that I know a lot of people didn't watch. I know a lot of people didn't watch it because maybe they were just at work, right? This show happened here in the middle of the day. There's a lot of people I'm sure who will go back and watch it. But there's a lot of people who did not watch this show, this pay-per-view, out of protest because they were very upset at the fact that WWE was running a show in Saudi Arabia, although you would never know that they were in Saudi Arabia because not one time on this entire show did they mention the words Saudi Arabia. They mentioned Riyadh, which happens to be in Saudi Arabia, but there is a clear directive, do not mention the words Saudi Arabia. But there were a lot of very upset people, and I was one of those people who thought that it would be best to cancel the show, delay the show, but don't have Crown Jewel on November 2nd. And they were never not going to do Crown Jewel. So they did the show. And you go into a show like this, and I looked at the card and I said, for what is a, one of the non-big 4 or 5 annual pay-per-views, it's a pretty stacked card. I mean, you look at some of the matches they had on this card going into the show, a lot of star power, a lot of big matches. Then Roman Reigns got sick, and so now that we're going to have a new champion. So I kept an open mind going into this show. And as I sit here now, as it just went off the air literally 2 minutes ago, I am just amazed by what I just watched. This is, by the way, your Sound Off Extra review for WWE Sweet Saudi Money 2, Electric Boogaloo. It was, thankfully, a show that did not have any Saudi propaganda video like we had for the Greatest Royal Rumble back in April. That was one of the things I said on the podcast a week or two ago. I said, all right, it's very clear now they're going to do this show. I certainly hope, at the very least, we don't have to sit through one of these propaganda videos talking about how progressive things are. I mean, that would have been salt in the wound. It would have been quite the ballsy thing for them to do. But if it was in the contract, it may just be a situation where they felt they had to do it. We did not have that on this show. This was a show, put your head down, let's just go do our job, and let's get the hell out of here. We had Hulk Hogan's first WWE appearance in 3 years. We had Kurt Angle's first singles match in a WWE ring in 12 years. Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement and wrestling his first match in over 8 years. We had the crowning of a new Universal Champion. And considering all of that, this felt like the most expensive, star-studded house show of all time. Crown Jewel, if I had to define what this show was coming out of it here, I would say Crown Jewel was a mix of amazingly average and just a total, complete shit show. An entertaining shit show at times, I'm not going to lie. There were certain parts, for all the wrong reasons, there were certain parts that I found perversely entertaining about it, but a shit show all the same. A show where, in the main event, Triple H got hurt very early on in the match, and I'll get into it when I get to the main event a little bit later on. For all the things that you could say about Triple H, and myself, and people over the years, a lot you can say about Triple H. The one thing that you cannot question, and I have never questioned, and I will never question, is the guy's toughness when he is in the ring. This is not the first time that he has suffered what could potentially be a very serious injury. We don't know exactly how serious yet it is. He may have made it even worse by continuing in the match. But this is far from the first time that we've seen him suffer a serious injury and finish a match out. There are guys who would not do that. And you got to also keep in mind here that he is one of the highest ranking executives in the company. Had this been virtually anybody else on that roster, as much as they would have wanted to continue, and this is why you got to put a little asterisk next to it, they would not have been allowed to continue. Triple H, though, he gets preferential treatment because of who he is. Maybe it was very stupid and dumb of him to do that, but still, that doesn't make him any less tough. I hope he's okay, but I suspect that it may not be such a simple injury. And it was tough to see. There were a lot of things tough to see in that main event. We'll get to that, but let's start from the beginning here, and we'll go through this entire shit show that was Crown Jewel. We had Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and Renee Young at ringside. Yes, Renee Young was not in studio back in Stamford. She was not in one of those old Michael Cole boxes that he used to keep himself in 2011 when he was doing commentary. She was not wearing a full body suit, although she was dressed in all black like she was at a funeral. So they were at ringside doing the show. Interesting to see Corey Graves there, given the comments that he made after the last Saudi show. I think it was a tweet that was quickly deleted, but there he was. Now, I will say the crowd sounded pretty energetic. This was not a dead crowd or anything like that, but what happened was it was reserved almost completely to those people, it looked like, who were relegated to the outer sections of the stadium. It's the same situation as they had with the Greatest Royal Rumble. And I heard from a few listeners in Saudi Arabia complaining about this in the days leading up to both shows when tickets were put on sale. That, look at the seating chart. This is terrible because, all the first 10, 15 rows or whatever, they're reserved for the elites and the royal family, and all the single people who aren't there with a wife or a daughter or whoever are relegated really to the upper tiers of the stadium. And I know that upset a lot of people. That was the case here, but I would guarantee you that virtually all of the noise was coming from those people. And you could tell because if you looked at those first several rows in the front row and the first 5-10 rows back on the hard camera side, I assume it was reserved for members of the royal family who all looked rather disinterested in what was going on. I think it was probably those sweet couches that they were sitting, or love seats, whatever the hell they were that they were sitting in. I want one of those the next time I go to a WWE show. I'd probably fall asleep in that thing. No wonder they seem so calm. But to their credit, again, the fans who knew the WWE product, they were into it. Hulk Hogan was introduced as the host of Crown Jewel. Talk about low-key announcements. Hulk Hogan making his first WWE appearance in whatever it's been, 3-4 years now. And almost like in the middle of the night, in the dead of night, they go and they don't even really announce it. They just added Hogan's bio, his name, to the Superstars page of who was coming over to Saudi Arabia on the WWE site. Only when certain wrestling websites questioned them and requested comment did they confirm that he was hosting Crown Jewel. Apparently there was a commercial that was done. They were going to air it on Raw Monday. They opted not to. They went out of their way like a thief in the night to make sure that they did not have a whole lot of pomp and circumstance in the lead up to this, which is just amazing. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before where you have, a big name like that who's going to be hosting or part of a show, and they go out of their way to not let people know about it. And Hogan being on the show is a whole other controversial thing. And I know there's a lot of people who still have no love for Hulk Hogan. They never will. They think he's a piece of garbage, and they hate it. The fact that he was going to be hosting the show. I guess WWE just decided, you know what, we got two different controversies going on here. Why don't we just merge the two of them together? Maybe they'll just absorb one another and, people won't be so upset. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, but there he was. He came out to Real American, getting more pyro than anybody on the main roster has in years. This entire show really was a pyromaniac's dream. And I'm not going to lie to you. And I think, again, Hulk Hogan, what he did, he's got to deal with the fallout from what he said. And I think it was incredibly tone deaf and stupid what they did back in July. I think it was at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view when they brought him into Pittsburgh and they had him give this whole big speech and kind of, sort of, but not really apologize to people in the back. But it ended up being a speech about how you got to be really careful about social media and what you say and people taking things out of context or recording you. It was everything that he should not have done. There's a time and a place for that. So I don't know whose idea that was, but boy, that didn't make things any better. And I know there's still certain wrestlers on the roster who are not very happy that he's around. And a lot of people who probably are very happy that Hulk Hogan is back. All that being said, I'm not going to lie to you. I was jamming to Rick Derringer as he came down to the ring. I mean, you could have put anybody out there. I'm jamming to Rick Derringer as he came down to the ring. I mean, this guy could murder 30 people and kick a puppy. And as long as they play Real American, to me, that will always be the greatest wrestling theme song ever made. And to think it wasn't even made for him. Go figure. He comes to the ring, he poses, cups the ear, does the whole Hogan routine. He cuts the most basic promo that you have ever seen in your entire life, and Hogan is the king of basic promos. Okay, he doesn't really have a whole lot to say whenever he comes out. He had somehow even less to say this time. And so unfortunately, he never did drop a, Saudi Arabia maniacs or anything like that. He never even mentioned Saudi Arabia, period. He mentioned Crown Jewel and basically said, let's kick off the show. And he disappeared and he was never seen or heard from again. Probably for the better. Kickoff match was Shinsuke Nakamura defending the United States Championship against Rusev. This was added only in the last day or so. Yeah, it's funny to me. You have a World Cup tournament full of Americans, right? 8 superstars, all of whom were born in the United States. But they opened this show, they opened this night with a Japanese guy against a Bulgarian for the United States Championship. Something is wrong with this picture. Nakamura went for the Kinshasa. Rusev tripped him, put him in the accolade. Nakamura went for the ropes. Rusev dragged him back to the middle of the ring. And so what ended up happening here, and I will say this was kind of clever. This was actually kind of a clever finish. So gets to the ropes. And as Nakamura is sort of, he's underneath Rusev. He's sort of backing up to kind of come above water, so to speak. He gives Rusev what you could argue was an inadvertent low blow using his head. Basically headbutts him in the crotch. And he had a little smirk on his face just to make it very clear he knew exactly what he was doing. But just the way they did that, I thought it was very clever. That did lead to the Kinshasa and the pin. So Nakamura wins. Not really much of a match. It was okay for what it was, and not exactly a surprising finish. And that does pave the way now for us to get a Nakamura-Seth Rollins match, champion against champion, Raw versus SmackDown at Survivor Series, a match we've never seen before. Although I have to tell you, Nakamura, and I don't hate Nakamura, but I have been completely underwhelmed by Nakamura's run in WWE so far. It's not all his fault. Part of it is the booking, and part of it is his fault. He does deserve some of the blame. He does deserve some responsibility for that. He had this long feud with AJ Styles, a whole series of matches. I thought as it went on and as it progressed, it did get better. They did have some pretty damn good matches by the end of it. But I think back to the WrestleMania match. I think back to some of the other matches they had. He didn't really show me much in those matches. He really didn't. He seems very content to just, he has his thing down. He doesn't really go above and beyond that. What you see is what you get with him. I've just been very underwhelmed when it comes to, a lot of his matches. And you can't blame all of that on Vince McMahon or Road Dogg or Triple H or anybody else. It cuts both ways. Where I think you can blame the company is the fact that I almost forgot we even had a United States champion. Before he came out on TV on SmackDown on Tuesday, and he had that, I think it was the match with R-Truth that he had, it was supposed to be a defense against Dillinger. Dillinger unfortunately hurt his hand. Before that, I completely forgot who the U.S. champion even was. That's pretty sad for what's supposed to be one of your most prized possessions in this company. And you have a United States champion who's virtually MIA. What does it even mean? Why even have a belt? So the main show opened with Randy Orton against Rey Mysterio, first round match in the World Cup. I liked how they had Greg Hamilton running down each of the participants' accomplishments before introducing them. They tried to give it more of a sports feel. We had a Mysterio springboard early in the match. Orton threw a picture-perfect drop kick, caught Mysterio in midair. Rey went for the 619. Orton grabbed him, hit a draping DDT. He went for the RKO. Rey countered it, the attempt, into a cradle, and he folded Orton up for the shock pin. This barely had any time to get going. This was a 2.5-minute match at best. Kind of like their triple threat match for the world title with Kurt Angle back at WrestleMania 22. That was, an 8-minute world title match? So, Orton, the poor sport that he is, hits Rey with an RKO anyway after the match, throws him outside, drops him ribs first across the Arabic announce table. Next first-round match was Miz taking on Jeff Hardy. Very basic stuff. As most of these first-round matches were, Hardy went for a swanton. Miz rolled out of the way. He's begging off. He tries to pin Jeff with his feet on the ropes, but the referee caught him. Hardy went for a twist of fate. Miz turned it into a skull-crushing finale and got the pin. And that was it. Nothing special at all. Yet another first round match, this time on the Raw side. Seth Rollins taking on Bobby Lashley, taking the place of John Cena, who refused to go to Saudi Arabia. There's been a lot of debate about that. John Cena, was he right? Was he wrong? Mark Henry, he talked to TMZ Sports the other day, and it wasn't really, healing on John Cena. He was just saying if it were my decision, I would not have made the choice that he did. You have fans and kids in Saudi Arabia. They paid to see you. You should make your shots. You should go. And he's old school, and I get that. And there's been other criticism even online, Facebook and Twitter, I've seen from people talking about how, it's unfair to the fans. And you have a lot of WWE fans and kids, you saw them tonight wearing all the merch, that it's unfair to them. And I get that. I get that point of view. But I don't fault John Cena at all. I don't fault him at all. I don't know if it's coming from a place of genuine, he's taking a moral stand, or if this has more to do with his movie career. I tend to think it's probably the latter. That's the cynic in me. Whatever his excuse was, he's got every right to say no if he doesn't feel comfortable doing the show. Who are you to say that he owes it to anybody to be on this show? He doesn't owe it to anybody. I'm not going to blame him for not wanting to fly to Saudi Arabia in light of everything that's happened of late. You're going to blame him for not going over there? I love how people have taken such a great interest all of a sudden in the children of Saudi Arabia. You think they're going to go sponsor a kid or something when this thing is over, like one of those old Sally Struthers Save the Children commercials. You going to do that? Now that this show is come and gone, I guarantee you they don't pay one thought to the kids of Saudi Arabia. Oh, they care about them so much. Give me a break. So, Bobby Lashley on Raw Monday night was the replacement. Baron Corbin slotted him in there to replace John Cena. And he had Lio Rush. Lio Rush was out there with him, although he was far more annoying on Raw than he was here. Another short match. Seth did bust out 2 straight dives out to the floor. Got to get those dives in. Lashley pretty much dominated this for all of the 5 minutes that it lasted. He missed the spear in the corner, hit the post, and Rollins hit the curb stomp for the pin out of nowhere. And, look, I get these guys have to wrestle 2, in some cases 3 times in one night. But this first round, at least to this point of the show, was just a whole lot of nothing. This was just nothing. I did get excited when I realized that we were 1 Kurt Angle victory away from a potential Kurt Angle-Seth Rollins match, but sadly I would end up disappointed. And that was the next first round match. It was Kurt Angle against Dolph Ziggler in the final first round match. And, we had that video package on Raw Monday night with Kurt showing us his accomplishments and his entire career. He cut a promo before this match, just, hyping himself up. I know I'm old and I'm not the Kurt Angle I used to be, but damn it, I'm going to prove why I can still be the best in the world. I thought they were doing like a Rocky Balboa story with Kurt. I didn't necessarily think he was going to win the whole thing. Randy Orton was my pick. Boy, was I wrong. But I figured he'd get a win, maybe 2, maybe he'd go to the finals, then he would fall short, but didn't happen that way. Instead, he had a good match with Dolph Ziggler and just lost clean in the end. Even with Drew McIntyre outside the ring, he never factored into this at all. I mean, McIntyre would factor into the later matches. Started with some mat wrestling. I thought Kurt looked good overall. This was his first singles match in a WWE ring in 12 years. He is slower, he's older, he's not the Kurt Angle of old, he can never be the Kurt Angle of old. And if you can accept that, he looked pretty good here. If you expected the Kurt Angle of old, if you expected even the Kurt Angle of TNA, you're not going to get it. Those days are over. I can't honestly sit here and tell you that I have much of an interest in seeing, very many Kurt Angle singles matches. People talk about dream matches all the time, and they used to talk about that with Kurt. Oh my God, Kurt against Seth Rollins, or Kurt against AJ Styles again, or maybe Kurt and Brock, which I don't think for Kurt's health and safety that's a good idea. But look, I don't see it. I don't really see there being any quote-unquote dream match for Kurt Angle anymore. Father Time, a broken neck, and bad knees, they catch up with you. But he hit a bunch of released Germans to Dolph. Later on, he hit the angle slam for a near fall. Went for the ankle lock. Ziggler escaped, hit a famouser for a near fall. Dolph put him in a sleeper. Kurt fought it off, got the ankle lock. Dolph reached for the ropes. Kurt pulled him back into the center of the ring. Eventually, he got out of it. He posted Kurt in the corner shoulder first. And as Angle stumbled backwards out of the corner, hit the zigzag, and got the pin. And that surprised me. Now, it's cool, in a way, that he put over Dolph like that. It's a big win for Dolph Ziggler. But if there is any value, or if there was to be any value in a future Kurt Angle singles match, we're going to, build it up like it was going to be a really big deal. Look, it's wrestling. You could tell whatever story you want. You could still build up a big Kurt Angle match if you really want to for WrestleMania. People may not even remember this pay-per-view in a few weeks. But I look at this and I say he lost clean in 5 or 8 minutes, whatever it was, to Dolph Ziggler. How excited can you really get about a Kurt Angle match now? So anyway, that being said, I thought it was the best match of the first round. We had New Day against The Bar with Big Show in their corner for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. New Day came to the ring on what was supposed to be a giant magic carpet. Heels worked over Kofi for a long time until finally tagged into Big E. So Big E runs wild for a little bit, tags Kofi back in eventually. Kofi hits a double stomp for a near fall. Big E gets back in the ring. He ends up getting punched in the face by the Big Show on the apron. And Big E gets up. He ends up eating a brogue kick from Sheamus. And The Bar retain their tag team titles. I thought this was fine for what it was. The finish was never really in doubt. We then moved on to the semifinals of the World Cup. The Miz against Rey Mysterio. Mysterio's ribs were the focal point coming off the attack earlier from Randy Orton. Mysterio went for a 619. Miz caught him. Random headfirst into the turnbuckle. Hit the skull-crushing finale. Good near fall. They got me on that one. I thought that would be the finish. Mysterio did eventually hit the 619. Was very slow climbing to the top. Went for the frog splash. Miz got his knees up, though. And hit a second skull-crushing finale for the win to advance to the finals. This was good. I would say the second best match of the tournament to this point behind Angle and Ziggler. We had our final semifinal match, which turned out to be the best match of the tournament. Seth Rollins against Dolph Ziggler. These two always have great chemistry together. This was no different. Not their best match by any means, but like I said, the best of the tournament, I thought. They focused a lot, if you remember what I said, on Rey's ribs in the previous match. Much the same way they did that, the announcers here focused on Seth's neck, stemming from the first match with Lashley. They had neck issues coming out of that match. Rollins, and I got to talk about this. So Rollins hits his superplex into a Falcon Arrow spot that he loves to do. It's become his signature. We see it in basically every Seth Rollins match now. Or at least he attempted the Falcon Arrow. He hit the superplex, but Ziggler escaped, and then he hit a zigzag for a near fall. And I have to just say this. This has been bothering me for a while. I just have to get this off my chest. I think the spot looks great and all, and it gets a great reaction every time he does it. But I absolutely cannot stand how much it has made superplexes out to be just another move. You're suplexing somebody off the top rope, and they just pop up like it doesn't mean anything at all. They don't sell it. They're not holding their neck. They're not, back down on the mat. It just looks so goofy to me. But yet, in another match, somebody will hit a superplex and, it's such a big move. The match is surely over, even though it never is. But it's things like that, and maybe I'm nitpicking, but it bothers me. Because, again, that's a huge move, and we're supposed to buy into it as being a huge move in everybody else's match. But we've seen a lot of people do that lately, where he'll hit it, and he'll go for the Falcon Arrow, and they'll counter, and they're countering and wrestling like, hey, yo, over here. You just got superplex, dude. You wanna lay down maybe for like 2-3 seconds? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'm the only one who is slightly annoyed by this. So McIntyre tried to get involved. Seth took him out. Drew, though, ended up shoving Rollins off the top rope, and that allowed Dolph Ziggler to hit a super kick and score the surprise win. Surprising to me, I did not see a heel versus heel final, even though part of me kind of liked that. But then I quickly realized that the finals were The Miz against Dolph Ziggler. And I suddenly did not care. We had AJ Styles against Samoa Joe for the WWE Championship. 360 days for AJ as the WWE Champion. Good for 10th all time going into this match. And now you can make that number 9. He is only 5 days shy of 1 full year as the champion. If you would have told me 3 years ago, 3 years ago, you would have told me that AJ Styles was not only going to come to WWE, he was going to bypass NXT, he was going to become the WWE champion, he was going to have a second reign as WWE champion, and that reign would end up lasting more than a year, I never would have believed you. I would have told you to put down the crack pipe. I never would have believed he was going to be champion, period. And here we are. I think that's pretty cool. Now, they started going at it. AJ was just all over Joe right from the outset. And unless my ears deceive me, I thought I heard the crowd pop into loud CM Punk chants. Maybe I just misheard and it was something else that sounded like CM Punk. Not the first time on the show that I heard that either, so that was kind of bizarre. But AJ was going after the previously injured leg of Joe. We saw Joe last time when he was trying to qualify for the World Cup and he hurt his leg. That was the worked injury in that match. I don't know the nature of the real injury that's kept him out the last few weeks. It may have been a leg injury. Joe absolutely destroyed AJ with a lariat for a near fall. So Styles gets the calf crusher on, and Joe is struggling. Finally makes it to the ropes, and AJ throws some leg kicks. Joe gets him in the coquina clutch, and AJ counters that. Joe fights off another calf crusher attempt. AJ hits a Pele kick, and Styles, he ends up hitting the springboard forearm, the phenomenal forearm, and he gets the pin. That was basically the match right there. Some hard-hitting stuff in the middle of this match. Very similar to the previous matches that these two have had. And again, a surprising finish. I know I shouldn't be surprised. I know, call me naive. I should be used to this by now. But I looked at this and I said, for all the matches they had, and Joe fell short, and Joe, lost. He got screwed over in that first match by the referee call, but then he lost the next one or two. And all of a sudden he returns out of nowhere because Daniel Bryan, much like John Cena, refused to go to Saudi Arabia, as is his right, by the way. And they slot Samoa Joe in his place here to wrestle for the championship. But I thought, well, surely if they're not, they're either doing a title change now, because how many times is Joe supposed to go up against this guy and lose? Or maybe they're setting up for some other weird finish and this thing is going to continue on. And then he just beats him clean with the forearm right in the middle, and Joe gets up and he walks off. And I thought to myself, well, adios Samoa Joe. And I said this on the show last week when I heard that he was hurt, and I'm reading these reports about how he's injured again. And I don't doubt that he was injured. Obviously, it wasn't a terribly serious injury. But Joe's not getting any younger. He's got a lot of miles on that body. It may just be a case where he just keeps getting hurt and banged up, and they don't have enough trust in him to put the title on him. I'm not saying that's the reason why. They may want AJ to just get to a year and go beyond a year. I don't think it's a case of let's just keep the title on AJ so he can beat Punk's record. I always laugh when people email me about that. It's like, what record are you talking about? What record, quote unquote, are you talking about? Because last I checked, CM Punk is not the longest reigning champion of all time. He's sort of, further down on the list. What exactly is the big deal about 434 days that you think that they would build an entire year around AJ Styles for the express purpose of beating some phony record that CM Punk had? I laugh every single time. And you know that if he passes 434 days, which I don't think he will, but you know that if he does, everyone's going to say, see, that's why they kept the title on him for so long. And I'm going to laugh and I'm going to point and I'm going to say that's a stupid argument even then, because I don't believe that's why they're keeping the title on him. So AJ wins, and that leads us to the Universal Championship. And here's where this show, my oh my, these last 3 matches on this show, when I called Crown Jewel a shit show early on in this review, I wasn't referring so much to the event up until this point, because to me, up until this point, this was an amazingly average show. That's the best way that I could describe it. It came off as the most expensive house show of all time. For all the pyro and all the money that was exchanged in hosting this show. And then we got to the Universal Championship match between Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman. Necessitated, of course, by the unfortunate announcement that Roman Reigns is sick and he had to relinquish the title, and it put them in a bind. And this was their solution. We'll turn a triple threat into a single, and we will guarantee a new champion crown. They had the option, if they wanted to, of kind of making things a little interesting and having a non-finish here, and that would have gone over like a fart in church, but what that would have done is it could have set up a tournament for Survivor Series, where you try to crown a new champion, have some qualifying matches on TV, now that's back-to-back tournaments, so I can kind of get maybe why they didn't want to do that. You just had a tournament on this show that wasn't very good. But it would have made things, I think, a little bit interesting. We've seen them do that twice before. Once, heading into Survivor Series in '98, and then once heading into Survivor Series only a few years ago. They opted not to do that. They did deliver. They did give us a new champion. Boy, did they ever. We had Baron Corbin, the GM of Raw. He was out there with the Universal title. And before the match even started, he attacked Braun Strowman, hit him with the championship. And so now Braun is down. Brock immediately hits an F5, goes for the pin, gets 2. Hits another F5. Braun kicks out again. Third F5. Kicks out again. I don't know why people are shocked. It was only WrestleMania this year that Roman Reigns kicked out of 5 or 6 F5s? They saved that move for an entire year. You know how many people he beat with one F5? You know who one of those people were? Braun Strowman. AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, person after person, one F5 put them down, all so that Roman Reigns could kick out of 6 of them at WrestleMania, and still lost. So he hits a third F5 here like it's supposed to be a big deal, and of course, like I said, Braun kicks out. So he picks up Braun, he gives him another F5 out to the floor, dumps him like a sack of garbage out on the floor. Strowman makes it back in just in the nick of time. Brock takes his gloves off, goes bare knuckles, picks up Strowman, hits another, or goes to hit another F5. Now, Braun did fight back a little bit here. There was one F5 that he countered, he slipped off. But Brock rather just hit another F5, and he pinned him. That was it. And just like that, 2-minute match, which is just under the average for Brock Lesnar these days. And Lesnar is once again the Universal Champion. How long was he Universal Champion for the first time? It's over a year, right? Year and a half. Now he's a 2-time Universal Champion, who is likely in the next few months on his way back to UFC. Although probably not until the beginning of the year. He may not even be champion by that point. I look ahead to some of the pay-per-views and the events they have coming up. They've already made the announcement that it will be Brock Lesnar against AJ Styles, champion against champion, non-title, at Survivor Series, a rematch from last year's Survivor Series. And I thought the match between those two guys last year was maybe the match of the year in WWE. So I am looking forward to this rematch, although AJ has to win this time. I know, right? I know. No, really, AJ needs to win this time. And also, I look at this and I say to myself, for all these people who look at the WWE product and they say nothing ever changes. It's always the same faces. It's always the same crap. You know what? As much as I am looking forward to Brock AJ too, just because of how good I thought the first match was, they're not wrong. Here we are a year later, and AJ Styles is WWE Champion, and Brock Lesnar is Universal Champion. If you were in a time machine, or a time capsule, forget time machine, if you were in a time capsule, if you were frozen in time a year ago, and you were unfrozen, and you were brought back to life and brought back to civilization, and you put on USA Network and you watch this, you would think, time stood still. You would never know an entire year went by. Nothing ever seems to change. But I think that's one positive thing to come out of it. I'm trying to look at the good in this, people. I am trying very hard to look at the good in this. And I'm all in for Lesnar AJ at Survivor Series. For Braun Strowman, well, that ends that. That's all I can say. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride for Braun Strowman. Even if the idea is to have him chase, because they're going to need to, have another big baby face on the Raw side. Braun is as good as anybody that I could think. I mean, if it were me, it would be Seth Rollins, but he's a little tied down right now. He's got the IC title. He's going to have his feud with Ambrose. I'm guessing that we're going to end up having something with Strowman and McIntyre. It would have made sense to me to have the championship involved. Really, to me, it would make sense to get that friggin' title onto Drew McIntyre. If it were up to me, I would have McIntyre confront Brock on TV on Monday and beat him for the title. I know that's not going to happen, but you want to establish a new face, a new dominant face. I don't mean baby face. I just mean, kind of top tier guy on the Raw brand side. You want him to make a statement. In all the years that Brock Lesnar has been back in WWE, you know how many times he's had an official match on TV? Not once. He was going to the night after WrestleMania 31. That was pretty cool, that whole segment with him and Seth. I don't think that counted as a match. I don't think the bell ever rung. So technically speaking, Brock has had 0 matches on television since he came back in 2012. Be pretty cool. Have Drew McIntyre come out, call out Brock Lesnar, call out the Beast. We get ourselves an impromptu championship match on TV. And Drew can do what Braun and Joe and all these other people could not do. But I won't hold my breath on that. Will not hold my breath on that. Braun Strowman, look, if the idea here is to build to a chase at WrestleMania, I ask you, do you care? At this point, do you really care? If all of this was designed just to help, build to a chase for Braun Strowman to ultimately win the championship at WrestleMania 35, would you even really care? I know the answer for me. The answer is a resounding no. Not anymore. We had Dolph Ziggler against The Miz in the finals of the World Cup to crown the I can barely say this with a straight face. Dolph Ziggler against The Miz, let me try again, to crown the best in the world. And somebody pointed out to me on Twitter, and I was going to mention this here. When I was promoting the World Cup brackets, or the participants in the tournament at Crown Jewel, and I was running down the names a few weeks ago, I said John Cena, Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins, The Miz, and Dolph Ziggler, and I made a comment about, well, at least we got 6 out of the 8. The idea being that the Saudis wanted all these big names on this show, and so WWE decided to load up the tournament with a bunch of big names. And 6 out of the 8, I think, would be considered big. And then maybe you don't even consider Rollins to be that big of a name. I threw him in there. I think he is. So I said, 6 out of 8's not bad. So what does WWE go ahead and do? The 2 men who go all the way to the finals are the 2 out of the 8 that I singled out as not being, quote-unquote, big stars. They ended up being in the finals. So Baron Corbin's out there, Shane McMahon, the respective GMs, or actually Shane's the commissioner. Remember, we can't have the SmackDown GM fly over there. So we had the owner, basically, the commissioner of SmackDown. We had Corbin representing Raw there at ringside. Drew McIntyre is at ringside. Match begins, and as quickly as the match started, it ended. Because Ziggler got knocked out of the ring. Miz went out to the floor to go after him, and he collapsed. And it looked like maybe he twisted his ankle, maybe he hurt his knee. I never really bought into it. I don't know, just the way he was sort of selling it. But that was the story here, is that he hurt himself. And the referee's saying, can you continue? And Miz is trying to be a fighter and say, I can go, I can do this. He tried to get up, he couldn't even stand. Shane comes over. Now remember the stipulation going into this match. Shane made it very clear on SmackDown Tuesday that whoever represents SmackDown in the finals, if they don't win the World Cup, they will be fired. Their job is on the line in this match. So I guess we'll find out on Tuesday if there's any repercussions for The Miz, storyline-wise. But Miz wants to go. He doesn't want to be fired. Shane comes over. He says, "Are you okay?" Shane sees the situation. They're about to announce Ziggler the winner by forfeit. Shane says, "No, no, 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 no. You know what? I'll take his spot." Shane O'Mac is going to take his spot. And Shane takes his shirt off, and he looks, how do they say? He looks swole. His arms were bigger than Hogan's. He was in tremendous shape. I'll give him that. And he immediately goes in there. He starts throwing, I hesitate to even call them punches, but he's throwing strikes or whatever you want to call them. He's throwing them left and right at Dolph Ziggler. Hits the back elbow off the ropes that he used to hit in his matches. We have Baron Corbin now. He's distracting Shane, so the referee decides to throw Baron Corbin out, just as he did earlier with Drew McIntyre. This is the second person in this match that the referee threw out. Michael Cole, who of course represents Raw, doesn't like any of this. He's freaking out on commentary. They go back and forth for a little bit. Shane ends up giving a slingshot to Ziggler, catapults him right into the post. Ziggler's down in the corner. Shane looks up top, goes to the top rope in the opposite corner. The fans in Saudi Arabia, they knew what was coming. They were going nuts. They were doing yes chants for this. And Shane hit the coast to coast. I don't think he made it all the way across, but kudos to the WWE production team because they changed the camera angle just at the right moment. And so you couldn't really, I don't know if he hit it or not. He probably came close enough, but they changed the camera angle so he couldn't see in case he embarrassed himself. To me, him just going up and even attempting that move, I can't say he's embarrassing himself. The fact that he's even still doing that at this stage of the game is pretty impressive. And he won with it. He hit the coast to coast, and he pinned Dolph Ziggler to become the best in the world. Shane McMahon is the best in the world. And he is out there celebrating with that trophy like he just won the Powerball jackpot. He's running around. He's got a big fat smile on his face. He's saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's running around with the trophy. Of all the WrestleMania finishes for them to replicate in this match, they chose WrestleMania 9. Widely panned as maybe the worst WrestleMania finish of all time. Now, I won't say it's the worst. I've got a few ahead of that one. But it's still pretty bad. And they chose to replicate WrestleMania 9. Only Shane in this case was playing the role of Hulk Hogan. He may as well. His friggin' arms were as big as his. The only thing we were missing was Fuji and the salt in the eyes and Yokozuna. And believe me, I'm sure the Saudi prince would have loved to have had Yokozuna. He was probably wondering, hey, we had Yokozuna on the Greatest Royal Rumble. How come he's not back on this show? Remember that? Remember they trotted out, I don't even remember the guy's name. What was the guy's name? I don't even know what the guy's name was. The Kimbe Matumba? I don't know. The guy that was meant to look like Yokozuna to basically distract them into thinking it was Yokozuna because the Crown Prince was a fan of wrestling 25 years ago and didn't know that Yokozuna was dead. Unbelievable. I mean, just in every conceivable way, when I think of this whole Saudi relationship so far, shit show is the word that just keeps popping into my head. From stuff like that on the first show, to this whole controversy leading into the show, to this entire show itself, this whole thing has been a $450 million shit show. Unbelievable. So yeah, Shane McMahon is the best in the world, and look, I'll try to look at the good in this. This turned out to be way more entertaining than The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler would have been. Entertaining in a 5-card pile-up, bodies everywhere, burn beyond recognition kind of way. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now I look at this and I say, where are they going with this? Because I'd have to think Shane's going to show up on TV with that trophy. He's probably going to sleep with it. He'll kick his wife out of bed. He'll probably sleep with that damn thing, the way he was celebrating here. I'm guessing, I had thought, and there were rumors and reports about this, but with what they did with Kurt when he was the Conquistador a few weeks ago and he qualified for the tournament, I thought they were going to do Team Corbin against Team Angle at Survivor Series for control of Monday Night Raw, and that's how Kurt would win his job back as GM, and maybe they still will. Now I'm not so sure. Now I'm thinking because it's the whole Raw versus SmackDown theme, And the way the announcers were playing it up as, this is like a screw job here. What is Shane doing? He's power hungry. This is unfair to Monday Night Raw. We may well be building to a Team Raw match versus Team SmackDown. Team Raw led by Baron Corbin. Team SmackDown led by the best in the world, Shane McMahon. Possibly for the World Cup trophy. I have a feeling that may be where we're headed for Survivor Series. And you'll have people say, maybe that, let's say that happens. Well, you see, everyone's complaining about this. It was part of the long-term booking. It's part of a plan. It's not that Shane McMahon was meant to be taken seriously as the best in the world. It's leading to something. I don't care what it's leading to. It's still shit. You could put a bow on it. You could spray cologne on it. A turd is a turd. They built this whole thing up for weeks on television like it was the biggest thing in the world. Shane McMahon is the best in the world? These people have lost their fucking mind. Then we got to the main event. First time ever. The Brothers of Destruction, Kane and The Undertaker, against Triple H and Shawn Michaels, back in the ring for the first time in 8.5 years. One of the few true blue wrestling retirements ruined. Done. Finished. No more. He's like everybody else now. That leaves us with who? Stone Cold? He the last true blue big name that retired and never came back? I think he might be. Now, he comes out, and DX, they're wearing these vests. They got their glow sticks. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get over bald Shawn Michaels. But you know what? At 53 years old, and after 8 years out of the ring, this guy was running circles around the other 3 guys in this match. He has definitely got a few more matches left in that body if he wants them. The others? Not so much. Triple H and Kane started out. This was to build to the inevitable tag, the hot tag. I guess it wasn't a hot tag, but it was based on crowd reaction. People wanted to see Shawn Michaels in there with The Undertaker, and they gave them what they wanted. And I will say that when those 2 guys first tagged in and we got HBK and The Undertaker in the ring together, I thought that was a cool moment. And then came the rest of the match. Triple H hurt his shoulder very early on. He did the Harley Race bump in the corner where he goes out over the top. And it was very obvious to me right away that he hurt himself because his arm was basically dangling at his side. I knew as soon as he got back in the ring because he's throwing chops. He didn't throw a single punch with that right arm for the rest of the night. He tried to clothesline Kane out of the ring, couldn't get the full extension on the arm. I knew right away something is wrong here. So we had Undertaker going at it with HBK, and I'm fast forwarding a little bit. I'm not going to go through every aspect of this match here, but it ended up out on the floor. And so they're taking the announce table apart. And so they're on top of the table. Now, Triple H, who was sitting this one out for a while, probably contemplating his life, and he was not going to allow the referee or anybody to take him out of this match. As I said earlier, he's got some pull that other guys would not have to do things like that. So Triple H comes over, and he makes the save. Something bad was about to happen to Shawn Michaels. He came over to make the save. And this was terrible because I think what was supposed to happen is Kane, I think, was going to whip him into the steps. And Triple H very quickly realized, you're not whipping me shoulder first into the steel steps. He was going to send Kane, I think, or maybe it was Undertaker. It might have been Undertaker, into the barricade. And he went to do it, but he was running. This whole thing was just a complete disaster. This looked horrendous. And you cut Triple H some slack because he was hurt, but still, this looked sad. That's the best word I could think of for it. This looked sad. Kane gave Triple H a choke slam through the announce table. That took him out of the picture for a while. Dr. Aman came over. He was looking him over. Triple H was out there a very long time. And so Shawn Michaels was left all by his lonesome. Poor Shawn Michaels, out of the ring for over 8 years. His first match back, and now he's got to carry the load in basically what turned into a handicap match for the majority of this match. And this is where the match sort of fell apart because it just dragged on and on and on and on and on and on, and there was no end in sight. So this thing just turned into a total slog, and there was a spot where Shawn was up top and Kane was up there with him. And I don't know what happened. I don't believe it was a case where Shawn did it on purpose and took it off. I think he may have thrown a punch or something, but in any event, Kane's mask, his mask went flying off his head, wig and all. It just goes flying. I think it went out to the floor. I'm not sure. And it reveals the mayor of Knox County. He was demasked. He was unmasked. And so that was just, I thought, a great metaphor in many ways for this match. A great metaphor in many ways for this entire pay-per-view. So now Kane is on the outside. The referee, he's still unmasked. The camera got another shot of him. Still doesn't have the mask back on. Kane, the referee gives it back to him. All of a sudden, he's got the mask back on 2 seconds later. He's got hair. Undertaker and Kane are outside the ring. Both of them are outside the ring. Shawn is still up top. And he looks back and he does this whole whatever, and he does the moonsault. And he hit it. Now, when I say he hit it, I mean he did the full rotation, just like, the Shawn Michaels of old. In that respect, he hit the moonsault. Unfortunately, then came the landing. What goes up must come down. This is basic science. This is physics. Neither one of those two guys on the outside of the ring bothered to catch him. Shawn landed face first on the floor. Splat. He came up bloody. I would not at all be shocked if he didn't get a concussion. I wouldn't be shocked to find out he had a broken nose. And look, I respect The Undertaker and I respect Kane. And no matter what I may say about how old they are and, they need to step aside or anything like that, I've said before, all the things even about Kane that I respect and how versatile a performer he's been for the company for so long. He can do anything you want him to do. You want him to be a comedy babyface, he can do that. You want him to be a heel monster, he could do that. He's a good guy to have around if you ever need him. I respect all of the years of service that these two guys have put in. But you've got two guys out there and you can't fucking catch him? That is inexcusable. I used to give The Miz shit for not catching people on dives out of the ring. He became notorious for it. R-Truth got hurt once on a dive on Raw because of that. These two, I don't care how many years of service they've put in, they don't get a pass for that. Just because, they're The Undertaker and they're Kane, and combined they've got 1,000 years on the roster. I don't give a shit. That is precisely why they should have caught him. I watched this, and I'm just thinking, and I don't care if they were gassed or what the excuse was. Two guys can't catch one? That was fucking ridiculous. So the match was just slowed to a total crawl at this point because with Triple H hurt on the floor, they probably didn't know if he was going to make it back in or not. They had to call spots on the fly and basically stall until hopefully he could get back inside. Now, eventually Triple H did get back into the match, and props to him. I'll say what I said at the beginning. I'll say it again here. You can say whatever you want to about Triple H. A lot of people do, myself included. The one thing I will never question is the guy's heart and his toughness in situations like this. 2 torn quads, and now a bum shoulder, and he keeps on going. Call him crazy, call him stupid, maybe he made it worse, but you know what? A lot of guys in that situation wouldn't do that. Not saying he's the only one who would, and like I said, he gets a lot of leeway because of who he is. A lot of guys wouldn't be allowed to continue, but that's tough. That's a tough guy right there. So he gets tagged back into the match. He's working. He's a one-arm man now. He tags in. He's not punching Kane. He's chopping him. Hits the high knee. Undertaker comes in, hits a spine buster on Triple H. Now Triple H goes for a pedigree. Undertaker fights it off. Triple H ends up hitting a horrible-looking pedigree. He did the best he could. Undertaker ended up locking on Hell's Gate, the submission, Hell's Gate. HBK, meanwhile, gives Kane a super kick. Kane stumbles backwards into Undertaker and Triple H, breaks up the submission. Everybody is down. Undertaker and Kane do the zombie sit-up. They go for stereo tombstones on Shawn and Triple H. Shawn reaches over, he gouges Kane's eyes. Undertaker eats a super kick. Kane eats a super kick. And then a pedigree. And Kane, and this is, I guess, now I thought maybe Undertaker and Kane were going to get the win since Undertaker lost at Super Showdown. This is going to, continue on. I figured, okay, the Brothers of Destruction, they'll get a win here. But they didn't. They lost. And it should have been obvious to me, I don't know why it wasn't so obvious, that Kane, the only reason he was in this match, probably in the first place, was to eat the pin. And that's exactly what he did. So DX gets the win. They made the most of it. They tried. Triple H's injury just ruined the match. I mean, it really stalled things for a very long time in the middle. I thought Shawn Michaels looked great for somebody who has not been in the ring for a full match like this. And this match was obviously the longest match on the entire show. For a guy who has not been doing this consistently for 8.5 years and is 53 years old, I thought he looked great. Otherwise, this match was, and I keep saying this word, a total shit show. And not just because of the Triple H injury. I'm guessing it was a separated shoulder. I don't know that. That's just a guess. Not only because of his injury. The match was slow. It was plotting. It was very boring in a lot of parts. And really, I think very sad. Very sad to watch, aside from Shawn, but even with Shawn, I can't get over the whole bald thing. It's just very sad to watch these guys in there. And I think Shawn Michaels said it best himself when the match was over, when he and Triple H were slumped down in the corner. And if you go back and watch, he was mouthing the words. You could see Shawn Michaels mouth to Triple H at the end, "We're too old for this." Ironically, he may be the only one who isn't too old for this out of all four of them. And so with that finish, the way it went down, I don't think we're done here with these guys. Now, depending on how hurt he is, Triple H is probably done for a while. But I think we're getting another Shawn Michaels Undertaker match, singles match, either at the Royal Rumble. They're doing Royal Rumble outdoors this year at Chase Field. That would be a big attraction for the Rumble. Or they'll just save it for WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium. But I do think we're going to end up getting another Shawn Undertaker match. So let's take a look at the Twitter poll. This Twitter poll. I'm almost scared to look at it. You guys, it was like animals waiting for food to be served. You were salivating, waiting for me to put this poll up on Twitter. And as I check it now, we already have over 1,800 votes. And that's going to go way up over the next 24 to 48 hours as more people watch this show. 1,800 votes, 13% of you said thumbs up, 87% of you say thumbs down. A resounding thumbs down for Crown Jewel. I don't really know what else to say about this show. In a lot of ways, this show was a complete embarrassment, and I think this company should be ashamed. There were some entertaining parts of it. I do figure and hope that certain things were done to at least build to something else, probably at Survivor Series. I would hate to think of it just being done in a vacuum. You know, Shane McMahon is the best in the world, and then we never hear about this again. I wouldn't put it past them, but I assume it's building to something. But again, just because it's building to something does not mean that what they gave us on this show was any good. This is supposed to be the best wrestling company in the world. They're signing talent left and right from all parts of the globe. They've got more talent under contract right now than any other company in the world at any point in human history. This company is growing and growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger, and NXT and the Performance Center, bigger and bigger. They've got more money than God these days, it feels like. And this is the kind of show that they put on? I'm sure they're going to look at this show and see it as a huge success in a lot of ways, because in their mind, I'm guessing, they had to go to Saudi Arabia. They wanted to see big stars. They got big stars. The crowd didn't shit on the show. The crowd loves Shane McMahon, and they love seeing Shawn Michaels, and they love seeing The Undertaker. So if you're a young fan in Saudi Arabia, you probably loved it because you got to see all the big names. So it could just be a case where they were serving a certain audience, fuck everybody else, even though it aired on the network, and they promoted it as some big pay-per-view. Maybe that was their mistake, frankly. Maybe they shouldn't have done that. Maybe the mistake was hyping this up to be a big, big show and the last however many weeks it's been on Monday Night Raw, forcing everybody to sit through segments with Triple H and Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and Kane, which therefore made it into a big pay-per-view that weeks worth of television has been building to. That's on the company. Yeah, they served the audience tonight. They got what they wanted. But how many weeks have we been sitting through promotion now for this match? Among others, in the tournament and everything on this show, it has dominated television for the last several weeks. So I think people have a right to be upset when you give them a show like this. It's not enough anymore just to give people big name. I mean, it might have been enough for them. For everybody else, you can't just say, here's a big name. Here you go, like a shiny toy. We're going to wave the shiny toy around. We're like a cat. Like a piece of string. Here's The Undertaker. Here's Shawn Michaels. Woohoo! Here you go. That's not enough anymore. And if I'm this company and I continue to put on shows like this, again, given all the talent they have, I would be embarrassed as shit. So, congratulations to them. They're making a shitload of money on this show, and they're going to make a lot more because there's going to be many, many more shows from parts unknown. Who the hell knows if they'll ever acknowledge where they're coming from ever again. I'm not going to sit here and rant about they did the show and the journalists and this and that. I'm just sitting here as a fan having watched this show thinking, what the hell did I just watch? This was quite the come down from Evolution last weekend, let me tell you. The good news, at least, is that Survivor Series on paper is looking like a hell of a show. Survivor Series could turn out to be the sleeper show of the year, and I thought Evolution was one of the better pay-per-views all year. It would be nice to wash the stink from this show off, come back with Survivor Series in a few weeks, and try to pretend that this thing never happened. I'd like to do what WWE was doing going into this show, and act like this show never even happened. But it did, and so I'm reviewing it, and I'm telling you that this show was a pile of shit. And so that's my Crown Jewel review. Leave comments down below. Whether you agree or disagree, I want to hear what you guys thought of the show. Or if you didn't watch the show, you can mention that too. I know a lot of people opted not to watch the show at all, and they're probably just going to go around listening to a bunch of reviews. But leave a comment down below. Hit the thumbs up. I appreciate the support. We are celebrating 11 years this weekend. Our 11-year anniversary podcast drops on Sunday. That's episode 571. So thank you for all the support. I'm out of here. I've had enough of this Crown Jewel nonsense. I'm happy it's over. Be well. Stay safe. I'll see you back here real soon on the YouTube channel for more Sound Off. Until then, take care, guys.